Yeah.
Yeah, Jim, I think this topic has come up between us quite a few times, and I can't remember how it first came up, but the idea, the notion of agency and what agency means, what being an agent means. And I'll take a little bit of poetic license, and feel free to disagree anywhere along the way. But I think other words that kind of fit into that category are advisor, recruiter. Quite honestly, I'm when I'm in the middle of somebody finding a job and the company hiring the person, I'm literally operating as an agent on behalf of that candidate, and perhaps to some extent on behalf of that client. I'm in the middle, and then the idea that we all need agents. We all need, maybe not all the time, every day, every moment, but maybe it's driven by circumstance. We're contemplating a change of some kind, or some kind of life circumstance has entered into our world that we are not sure how to handle. There's a lot of reasons that an agent could become pretty handy. And I also, at least in my opinion, I find a lot of people are somehow resistant to that. And it's probably because I think I should be able to do this on my own. If I need to seek out help from someone else, that somehow makes me weak, when it's pretty easy to argue that stepping out of your own way and selecting the assistance of someone else might make you stronger, probably would make you stronger. What are your thoughts on that, Jim?
Well, my thoughts are, first of all, I appreciate what you're saying about almost stopping and defining what this means. And there's many terms that are used, right? Coaching, an advisor, mentor. Those are all different terms, based on your personal experiences in life. But it is advice, and it's also agency, where it takes somebody that's a trusted person that gives you a perspective, or even, and I'm finding even recently with some conversations I've had, giving them permission to do something they know is the right thing to do, but they need somebody to reinforce their decisions or their thoughts, and they're very careful to just open that up to anybody. A fear of being judged, or fear. So I'm finding recently, I think in both our lives, people come to us that we've had relationships for years at some of the oddest times, but you could tell they're looking for advice, and they obviously trust us enough that what we say to them will be in their best interest and not self-serving. And I'll tell you why we started this. This is when we started doing these talks. I shared a story with you when I was a few years ago. A very, very good friend of mine was the manager for the Seattle Mariners. He was it was a manager. So he had called me. Obviously, I was in his wedding, and we grew up together, played football in high school, and very, very good friends. And he invited me to join him with his at the hotel that the Seattle Mariners had paid for. He was there for a couple of weeks doing all these press conferences. It was a big deal, right? So I flew up there. I had some business up there, so it worked out good. I flew up there, and we were at his suite, basically. I remember it was at the Four Seasons, beautiful suite. I get in really late, and we're sitting around, just him and I. And he says, "Hey, so tomorrow I have to do this." And then I think he was meeting with Ichiro at the time, and all these different things that he had to deal with. And then a couple of days later, oh, that's right, that was off season. So then I came back a few months later, and it was in season, and I was in his office. There was all the press conferences and everything. He walks out of the office, and he says, "See that guy that just walked out of my office? He just signed a contract for $40 million. And first thing I thought, $40 million, what, to throw a ball over a pitcher's mound, right? I mean, a diamond. I mean, come on. And he goes, and he was just kind of playing around, like, can you believe that? And then first thing I thought it was, he didn't negotiate a contract for $40 million to throw a ball over a baseball diamond. His agent did.
Yeah.
His agent is the one that says, based on this 22-year-old that's this size that can do this consistently. The market will pay you this amount of money. And he would have thrown that ball over the pitcher's mound for free, right? Or not the pitcher's mound, I'm not a baseball guy, you can tell.
The diamond.
But the diamond. But my point is that many of those guys do that for free. For many, many years, you never get paid for it. But it was the market, it was the agent that went and negotiated a contract and put a value on his ability for that period of time. So from that point on, I always realized the value of an agent is somebody that doesn't have emotion. He's not emotionally attached. No different than a music artist or any kind of talent, right? Creative talent. It requires somebody that has strictly a business mentality of what that's worth in order to. It's also why when you purchase a home, it's one of the largest decisions you'll make there's a reason that agent, even though I think many of them are overpaid in commission, but they do play a very important role in the emotional side of keeping the parties apart, why they negotiate. And even though I don't think they always negotiate on your behalf on a really real estate transaction, I'm playing around, I think they often negotiate on a commission for themselves. Well, that's human nature. They play a very important role. Protecting you from the outside world. So yeah, the word agency, I think, has evolved a lot into what we talk about every week, and it starts with yourself, but bringing in somebody that you trust, that can give you a perspective that you cannot get from yourself.
Yeah, and I also think to protect you from the outside world, but also as well to protect you from yourself. Because I think it's difficult for us to be objective about ourselves. And I guess I can just speak for me, but I think that's, in my experience, I've found that to be the case. I have people tell me all the time, kind people that know me, how wonderful I might be at something, and that I should give myself more credit for that. And I don't think I'm alone at all. I think that we all do that. And when we don't see ourselves the way the world sees us, sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. But I mean, what I did for a living. I mean, I was the agent between software engineers and companies looking to hire software engineers. And the way that commission works is that I take a percentage, not from the person's salary, but calculated as a percentage of the salary. So I have a vested interest of getting that person as much money as I possibly can, because then my commission will go up. Yeah. And then my responsibility on the client side is to not only bring the right person to the table culturally and technically and personality wise, but I have to have their best interest at heart too, because they're in control of the hiring decision. I don't have that control. So it's interesting. And we were talking earlier, my kids come to me. I'm sure your kids come to you. Sometimes they come for advice, but most of the time they come just to have me listen. So, and I think, I think agents are, also have to be good listeners as well, because
but I also think your mother or father as your agent is probably the worst agent you can have.
Oh, no question.
And or brother or sister. So this is going to fit into our framework, that we use, right? Our world, you mentioned world view in our career and all these, how they all fit together. So I want to get back to that, but I am going to share another quick story about another friend that you've heard me mention. He was a professional, NFL football coach. And we did a number of events together and over the years, but when he was, particularly when he was with the Oakland Raiders, he had a lot going on. So sometimes I would work with his agent, and I got to know his agent. So I don't know if you know, but coaches have agents too. And those agents, like you said, are looking out for their best interests for their career, but those coaches, they have agents that also work with financial planners, tax attorneys, all these other, to keep them out of trouble, to protect them, as you said, from themselves, or often to protect them from their own family taking advantage of them. Yeah. And as, now I'm going to the third story. Another agent for professional rugby players, and he's in England, really good guy. But a few years ago, I had dinner with him, and his wife's American. He's English, and he was also sharing with me as a sports agent, his greatest, role or frustration every day is taking these athletes when they're at their prime, 20, 23 years old, best in the world at what they do. And then they get an injury, and then they just completely fall apart because their value goes down. And it's really keeping them together. And then also keeping the girlfriend that's reaching for, everybody's after him to get a piece of him. So yeah, I've grown to really value the role of an agent in all these different scenarios. So that's how it came up. And then, like you said, what you do for a living is probably the ultimate, right? You're their agent for their career, of how they're going to provide. So tell me how you think this fits into our framework of our 5 areas that we use, starting with self, right? Our self-worth.
I think if one were able to be supremely self-aware, you probably would have less of a need for an objective third party, because everything that you just talked about falls into the category of self-awareness in my humble opinion. I think the whole circle, the whole flywheel, all 5 categories fit in. I mean,
self-awareness, self-confidence.
Yeah.
Right?
Self-confidence, self-doubt.
Self-doubt.
Yeah. Self-accountability.
Self-evaluation.
It's all, I mean, just go around the thing. It's if you just talked about injuries, that's, physical health. You talked about fear. We talked about fear. That's, mental health. Yeah. And you mentioned the people's families grabbing after their money, the professional athletes, and coming after leveraging their fame and stardom, and that's relationships, right?
Yeah.
And money's obviously the main obvious thing that they're brokering is how much money this person's going to be paid, going to make, going to pay out to other people. So money's a big one. Worldview is certainly part of this. Are you taking a conservative view of the world or a more liberal view of the world, and in the choice of your agent, or what you expect from your agent, out of your agent? And then I think
and in the worldview too, we talk about your childhood or your hometown, right? Many of these athletes, I'm just using an athlete example, they don't come from money. They come from humble beginnings, and they're not around money. Their family members don't know how to manage money or that. So there's different cultures, especially, in sports like baseball, where culturally very different.
Yeah, I've heard quite a few stories of professional athletes. I'm sure you know some, and I know a couple, but that are taken advantage of by their own mother, by their own father.
Oh,
It's what a difficult thing that we don't really talk about much, which is I came from nothing. Now I'm a gazillionaire, and everyone in my world, with few exceptions, is now motivated by my fame and my money. And they deserve no credit very little credit for it. Perhaps my mom and dad did, but it's amazing how people glom on to celebrity and money. And a good agent can protect you from your own family. Isn't that an interesting concept?
What the stories you shared with me when you work with your clients, even to today, is, and again, I don't want to quote you, but it's been pretty consistent. It's not just finding them a job. It's giving them, it's helping them regain their confidence, because their confidence is broken. And you've obviously developed a process or a method that you have to start with that, and then you can get on to the other stuff of finding the right company at the right time. But I mean, it's easy to talk about professional athletes and professional entertainers, but I like the way you break it down to what's one of our areas of our framework about, and that's our careers and our profession, because so much of that affects everything else in life, right? The relationships we have, our mental health, our physical health, and so on. But yeah, kind of break it down, especially for guys or people that are moving into their mid age, that obviously your value to the market in your 40s is going to be different than 50s and 60s, right? And
it's interesting. One of the more recent conversations with a guy my age, and Yeah, he'd made the decision. He had to change what was going on professionally in his life for a variety of different reasons. Being part of a COVID layoff triggered another series of events. His time in life, being a grandfather and wanting to be around his grandchildren, and his concern about the perception the market might have because of his age, which is, it's probably true and false. There's some truth to it, and some of it's is kind of misinformation. But it's about how you package it, and I think that's how I started. I think that he went back into the market to some old clients and was not received as eagerly as he thought he was going to be. And I said, I think that's probably has to do with the way that you tell your story. I think what we probably need to do is think about, all right, what strengths do you have? What skills do you have that are transferable? What do you love?
What type of job, Mark? Just so I appreciate the context of this. What type of job are we speaking of right now? Are we talking to apply for a position with a large corporation, or are we talking about a particular industry?
This particular guy was financial services. He worked close to the technology, but he was not a technologist, and I would put him at an executive level. Mm-hmm. He was leading, I think, a team of 15 people, and the implementation of different systems and processes in the financial services space, and that's an industry I've spent a good bit of time in. I don't necessarily understand it, but he wasn't sure whether he was going to.
My wife was in it for 35 years, and I don't truly understand it either. So. I don't even think they understand it, quite honestly.
Well, it's a pretty broad it's a pretty broad term too. The subgroup underneath financial services, and he also used the phrase he worked in professional services, and I said, well, I think that. I don't know that most people would understand what that means, because I don't. I would need to ask you. You need to tell me a lot more about what does professional services mean to you, and then we went into that detail. And what I find myself doing, Jim, as an agent for these people that are in career transition, so that it fits into our topic, but it's also true, is I ask a lot of questions, because I don't want to make any assumptions about what's important for them. And I also think asking questions makes them think about things that they might not otherwise think about, which I think is another valuable support mechanism that a good agent can provide.
It also helps you understand the context of what it is they're frustrated with or they're struggling with, right? And that could take a few laps, a few rounds of questions to really to get to it, because the first 3 or 4 layers is just protecting their feelings.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. Vulnerability is a big thing, and fear is a big thing. And fear, we don't want to face we don't want to face our fears. Mm-hmm. So it's very helpful.
Self fears. Throw that one in the middle of our self.
Insecurities. Self doubt. These are the things when you want to make a change. And so any of the examples that you mentioned, professional athletes, professional entertainers, moving from one team to another, getting traded, it's the same thing as a professional executive, right? It's a different level. It's a different maybe amount of money. It's a different circumstance, but it's got a lot of similarity to it. Change makes people uncomfortable. Change makes people fearful. Change brings out self-doubt. And I think having kind of talked about this for a few minutes, it dawns on me that a lot of what a good agent does has nothing to do with money, right? It has to do with, like you said before, protecting this particular individual from the outside world and the dangers that exist in the outside world that are many for all of us.
And himself.
And himself, yes,
or herself,
or herself, and maybe political correctness. I love that. But no, I think, and when you and I have talked about it, it continues to impress me, because I think I told you both of my daughters who are entrepreneurs have coaches. Mm-hmm. It's slightly different. They're not like brokering a deal on behalf of my daughter, but they are doing everything else we just talked about. They're helping them with their own self-confidence, helping them with their story, helping them understand their strengths, helping them navigate away from perhaps their weaknesses. These are all kind of very important personal things. And some of those agency relationships, I think the good ones, all of them, I would say most of them involve, turn into friendships, but to your point, don't go in with a friend. You can make a friend of someone who's not a friend over a period of time. And there's probably some interesting discussion around the dangers of that, because, you kind of have to have a line. I would imagine some of these agents, particularly with spoiled celebrities, deal with all kinds of shit that they didn't expect they'd have to deal with, whether it's keeping people out of jail or getting people into rehab or whatever, but they get involved in all that stuff, at least in my experience.
Yeah, they have to protect the product, right? To protect the talent and also helping them realize that their earning ability is is a very small window. And then after that, what happens? Like I said, also, I think you've heard me say this before, I'm getting very comfortable with, even a role that I didn't maybe seek out to have, but I see the value in it. And that's, these are relationships with people that obviously we have a friendship, but they trust, and then they will come to you in these times of need, and you value them. I've done that with you and other people. You really value what they're going to say, because whatever their opinion is going to affect the direction you go. Right.
Yeah. I think I think that one of the things that I heard a lot when I was actually still recruiting, I'm kind of coaching now, and you and I are trying to figure out how we can help people from a mentorship coaching standpoint too. And I think that, for anybody listening, that's what we're putting out there when we do put it out there, which we're pretty close to. And that is, if you're in a position of professional or personal transition and you're struggling with some of this stuff, that's what we do. And I think what I've discovered about you, Jim, and some of this you've shared with me and some of this I've just observed, is that you're a natural mentor. You enjoy it, and you give a shit about people. And I think I can say the same thing about me. People do come to me for advice, unsolicited advice. And those that I used to get the comment all the time, Mark, you don't sound like all the other recruiters that I talk to. And I think most of that is because I do give a shit, know?
Well, I think both of us have been in positions of what we call it, leadership, or positions where you have a lot coming at you at one time, right? You're owner of a business, owner of something. And I think as I get older, I appreciate those people around me at that time that don't come to me with problems, that come to me with solutions that I trust. But even more importantly, they come to me with information, maybe not good information, but information not that I want to hear, but information that I need to hear in order to make the best decisions at the time. And so I think as times went on, unless you've been in that position, you can never really truly appreciate what somebody's going through when they have so much coming at them at one time. And this is, typically, like you said, in a position of leadership or influence. I
think, one of the things that makes me think about, and I've told you this story before, is when I told my father I was going to start my own company, and I had 2 little kids and one on the way, and it was just from the outside world, particularly the people that loved me, like my dad. He's like, "Are you sure?" I mean, he literally tried to dissuade me from that. And that's a perfect example of someone who loves me dearly, but was giving me bad advice because he didn't have, he had no context. He worked for the same company for 35 years. Right.
Yeah, Mark, I'm really glad you mentioned that. Sometimes, and with all the best intentions, the worst advice that I ever received was from the people closest to me.
Yeah.
And I look back and I almost, it's so clear. I just remember at that time I made that decision based on what they said, and it's not fair to them. It's nothing to do with them personally, right? They just gave you their opinion. So sometimes the worst advice is the people closest to you, and that is your friends, your family. Yep. So this is back to an agent. An agent is not your friend. An agent has a completely different role than a friend or a family member. But I want to share something with you that I've got, and again, I like to kind of base everything off quotes, right? There's what the world needs. You've heard this before is wisdom. There's plenty experience. There's abundance of knowledge and experience, but the world needs is wisdom. And so I like, if somebody calls me and asks me for advice, whether it's my high school football coach, the president of the organization that I work with, I like to kind of start it off with frame. I say, hey, I don't have the answers. I have some experience of what I experienced, similar, and I have some knowledge to the problem or what you're going through. But anybody that tells you they have the answers, that has to come from you. But what I do have that I'm getting, I guess, more comfortable or confident about especially as you age into your different stages of your life, I think I do have wisdom based on some horrible mistakes I've made and paid a dear price for, or other people I've experienced making good decisions or bad decisions. So wisdom, I think is that's why I like the quote, is always in need, wisdom. But you're not saying you have the answers. You're not giving advice to do a particular task or make a particular system. What you're trying to do is give them the bigger picture and how this could play out, and then that's ultimately their decision, right? And with
that's an important distinction. I think that I think telling someone that what they should do is irresponsible.
Yes.
And I think that, as I said earlier, I think one of the things that I do when I'm put in a position of agency is, like I said, I ask a lot of questions. I remember coaching up my girlfriend's daughter years ago, and I just told this story the other day. And she was in a bad place at work, didn't like her boss, didn't like her job, didn't have any idea how to go about pursuing an option or what those options might be. And the point to the story is, I said, well, what do you do? And she said, I'm an office manager. And I said, what does that mean? She said, well, I manage an office of 15 people. I said, what does that mean? And I said, what does that mean, or what, or why? 7, 8, 9, 10 times.
Just removed all the layers of the onion, right?
All the layers, just peeling the onion. And finally I said, so the system that you use to process purchases and supply chain and inventory and invoicing, is that a system that you designed, or is that a system that you inherited to use? And she lit up and she said, oh, that's a system I was partially responsible for the designing. That's the most fun I've ever had here. And I go, bingo. Now we're going to find you a company that doesn't have an automated system, and you're going to go in and help them build their system based on your experience. And within 3 weeks, she had a job making more money that lit her up every day. Yeah. She had no idea what to do. And with a series of 15 or 20 questions and a couple of suggestions, I changed her life. No,
you did. I really appreciate the story on a couple levels. Something that I overlooked. You helped her create clarity. And that didn't come from the first question. That many layers of clarity. But in the end, what you helped her do is regain her confidence and her value to the market. She knows without question she had value, and she didn't even recognize it. She forgot about it. It got so buried among all the other bullshit that was going on. And again, that's what a great agent does, because you know the value that has to the professional world, because you've had experience, right? And you've had knowledge of people. Well, we talked about it before, right? Having those people in your office, those people around you, they're invaluable. You need them. But if she can't recognize that, then how could she tell anybody? And again, this is why, as I used to think that agents were not necessary or overpaid or collected money they didn't deserve. But then I think as time goes on, I'm becoming more an opponent of the importance of an agency. And back to what we were talking about, I think, we're getting close to doing this. I also, as you know, I'm an inventor, so I like tools, and in order to do good, you need good tools, right? But you also need people that will teach you how to use the tools. And some of the stuff that we've been working on, that looks like it's going to happen pretty soon, is providing tools. So what tools do you use to help people get clarity in their professional careers or other things? But talk about tools that you've used. Yeah.
Well, the tools, mine is not really the recruiting business. Everyone's trying to push it into automation. Everyone's trying to push it into job boards and now AI and automatic, robotic automated resume scanners. And it's like, it's never going to be a fully automated process because it's about people. It's people. Right. And so the tools I use outside of all of the questions that I've accumulated over the years and my ability to get to the core issue of anybody very quickly and kindly as well. Obviously the resume is a tool. So we do talk a bit about, your outward facing self in the form of your resume. Your LinkedIn profile is another tool. And LinkedIn claims that I'm an expert because I've been doing what I've been doing for so long. So I use that when I need to, but there's a process behind that to, again,
those are really important tools that you're going to need in your toolbox in order to improve. Yeah. And
the other one that I created a few years ago is a workbook that's called Find Your True Purpose. And what I do with people with that is people don't like to give themselves permission to think outside of the box, whatever the box is. And so this is a probably an hour or two exercise. It's like a 10-page thing. There's 7 core questions, and it makes you look in the mirror and say, well, if you didn't need money, and it's an example, if you didn't need money, how would you spend your time? Right. What did you really?
Is it an assessment process or method you created?
It's a self-assessment process. Yeah.
I see.
It's where can we find the intersection between what you love to do, what you know to do well enough that you could teach it to other people, and is there a potential way to monetize that in the form of a full-time job or perhaps freelancing, starting your own company, whatever. But it does what I just described to you that I do in person before I get in touch with someone, so that when we have that first consultation, if they've gone through this exercise, the conversation we have is much richer. It's much more effective. It's much more focused in the right direction from an early point on. So I don't necessarily have to go and peel that onion again. I usually do, but most people that go through the process say, and I tell people this is a very simple exercise, but it's very difficult. You're going to have to say things to yourself and admit things to yourself that you probably don't want to. And that's part of what an agent does too.
Absolutely. I believe in those self-assessment tools. They also could be very damaging as well, right? You pick the wrong one, and then you've done a self-assessment. Now all of a sudden it spits out this information based on a method that doesn't, it's not good for your self-confidence or anything. But I also like roadmaps, right? Like here you are today, where do you want to end? Like an end point, and then creating a visual mind map or a roadmap of what success looks like. What has to happen in order for you to feel better about yourself. And again, I don't think that's something you can do by yourself very effectively. The work, you have to do the work, but bringing somebody in to help you, talk you through that and help you navigate the plan or the roadmap, to get you to a better place. So no question, and that's why our more recent collaboration with our pal Jeff is we're excited about being so close to being able to deliver this his tool to our audience as part of the process of just what you said, building that roadmap, and then we can help people navigate that roadmap. And I'm excited also, like you said, to really reframe this agency role in a way for the right people that really want to go maybe to the next place in life. It doesn't always have to be professionally, right? In fact, a lot of times it's not professionally. That's just as a man, that's our self-worth is directly related to that, but it could be in other areas.
Well, I mean, look at just as for instance, I mean, we can certainly bring quite a bit of experience and wisdom to fatherhood.
Mm-hmm.
Entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
physical well-being, mental well-being.
Yeah.
These are all areas that
Innovation is a really big one. The
innovation.
world right now, especially with what's going on with AI, there's going to be all kinds of new opportunities and innovation. Nobody has any idea what it's going to look like yet, but it's clearly in the process of happening. And I heard something, and we'll wrap up the call on this. I did hear something because I'm pretty involved in this AI, these AI communities and forums, but I'm speaking for the San Francisco Bay Area. They really feel that this is as big as the internet itself, the AI.
I've heard that too.
But I want to be specific. That's a very general, prediction, right? But what it is, it's knowledge. It is knowledge or domain expertise of a customer journey, workflows. Those are things that people today have take for granted. That's just their know-how in their minds. But that now is going to be put into these AI models that really remove the friction and make the world a lot better. Sure, there's going to be there are always bad actors, but this could be, not just opportunities, financial opportunities, but really to make the world a better place. But again, everybody's wondering what their role is.
I think I agree. I've done a limited amount of, I follow a couple of publications that I respect in the AI space, but being a technology recruiter for 35 years, I've seen the evolution of technology. And when a new technology comes out, there's all kinds of immediate experts. I'm like, you can't be an expert. It's only been out for 3 fucking months.
I couldn't agree with you more. A lot of bullshit. But life is, life is a lot of bullshit.
Yeah. Well, I think the two things that strike me are, it can really eliminate this whole I'm looking at a blank page thing. It kind of like can jump you over that. And the other thing that seems to be consistently the truth is the specificity and creativity of the prompt is where the art is, right?
Yes.
That's where the human intervention is.
And the creativity and the art.
I think
but you have to have context. You have to have knowledge of a specific industry or a know-how of how things generally operate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's taken for granted, especially if you're in your later years of your career, right? Your 50s, 60s, and so on.
Yeah, I'm convinced that you can't look the other way on this one. You got to jump in and you got to at least become somewhat familiar and maybe not an expert, but you can't just pretend it's not there because other people will run right by you. But I think kind of to wrap it up, I think anybody that's listening, I would ask you to ask yourself, look in the mirror and say, are there challenges in my life right now where I could use an objective third ear? And if that's the case, you don't have to look us up, but you should look somebody up. And I think that if we've done nothing other than just flip a little bit of a switch for some people to say, I've been stuck here for a while, and maybe it's because I'm not asking for help, and just put that one in your back pocket.
Yeah. We'll finish my final words up with a quote from my famous 14-year-old, right? Don't take criticism from people you would never go to for advice.
Yeah. It's that is a wise thing to say. That is a wise thing to say. But advice can be very helpful from the right person. So give that some consideration. I enjoyed this one, Jim. I think this is a very, very helpful episode.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Mark. Until
Thanks,
next week.
See you.